Good morning. It's 10 a.m. Call this meeting to order of the Dissolution Committee for the former Board of the Dallas County Schools Trustees. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, our flag.
Oh, flag disappeared.
No,
It's right over here, Dr. Moses. I see it right there.
there is a flag. I've never said a pledge without a flag. But we'll say a pledge today. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I think we can still honor our country without a flag, but I'm sure we'll get one next time. Welcome, appreciate everyone being here today. Regrettably, we have some members that are ill. Brent Ringo, I think, sent everyone a note this morning that he was ill, and Sandra called me about 5 after 8 this morning and said she was also ill. So we have a couple of members missing, and we also have some new members of our board this morning that we want to welcome. And we're also going to want to issue an oath of them. One of them is our Dallas City Manager who's just come in. Welcome. Glad to have you here. Also, George Scott, we're glad to have you as well. And Daryl Coleman is here and is here in the place of Bobby Burns, Superintendent of Schools for the Carrollton Farmers Branch District. We'd like to issue the oath of office to the two new members, and also to Daryl, since Daryl will be voting. Kay Gully, who is with Dallas ISD. Kay, will you come forward? Would you like the members just to stand at their desk? If they would stand, and we will issue them the oath of office for this position.
I state your name, please.
I, Daryl Coleman,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will faithfully execute the duties
that I will faithfully execute the duties
of the Office of Dissolution Committee
of the Office of Dissolution Committee
appointed by the Comptroller of Public Accounts
appointed by the Comptroller of Public Accounts
for the state of Texas,
for the state of Texas,
and will to the best of my ability
and will to the best of my ability
preserve, protect, and defend
preserve, protect, and defend
the Constitution and laws of the United States
the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of this state.
and of this state.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. And before you leave, would you please sign your notary form and my voting paper?
Thank you, Kay. We appreciate it. And new members and Daryl, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us today. We've been having a lot of fun, and we're glad that we can share this with others. In any event, I do appreciate your service and appreciate your coming. We have an agenda that is, I'm sure you've looked at. Our action items begin with number 4, and number 4A is consider approval of minutes for the meeting held January 8, 2018.
So moved.
There is a motion by Kelly Spencer to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second by Celine Miller. Any comments? Any further additions needed? If not, would you signify your approval by aye? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same side. The minutes have been approved for the meeting held January 8, 2018. Action item B is consider the distribution of 3 police vehicles to Dallas ISD. Mr. King.
Yes, sir. We're working with Dallas ISD to serve us in a police capacity. In order to do that, they're going to need 3 of our vehicles. So in lieu of paying an administration fee and to clear up insurance issues, I would recommend that we transfer these 3 vehicles to Dallas ISD so that they can provide the needed service, and saves us the administration fee for the program.
Comments, questions? Motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of this action item 4B.
Mr. Dransfield has moved approval of action 4B.
Second.
There's a second from Dr. Parra. Any other comments, discussion? I hear none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. Action item 4C is to consider approval of the compromise and settlement agreement with the City of Dallas for crossing guard services. Mr. King.
Yes, sir, I'm going to turn this over to Carlos, our attorney, but basically this is an agreement that we've worked out. There's one minor change that I believe he's going to discuss. This is basically the same thing we kind of really agreed to back in December, and I'm going to recommend that you approve this agreement with the change that Mr. Lopez has.
Mr. Lopez.
Yes.
Carlos, you want to tell us a little bit about what we need to know?
You don't hear me, should I step up to one of mine?
Are
we recording it?
I think we are recording, aren't we? Yeah, it'd be good to be in a mic, if you don't mind. Thank you, sir. Okay. You're live.
Are we live? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now, the only change that we have is just a minor change. In the agreement that was drafted when the city attorney sent it back to me, it makes reference to DCS, and I just want them, we agreed that we'll use the formal name, the Board of Dallas County Trustees, when they talk about the former DCS. So that's the only change. I've emailed back and forth with the representative from the city attorney's office, and they said, yeah, that's fine. So that's the only change to what's in the packet.
Okay.
And so happy to answer any questions if anyone has.
Before you leave, hang on just a minute. Mr. King, is there any additional information you want to share with regard to this agreement?
No, sir, we're good to go.
Okay, are there any questions or comments with regard to the agreement? Then I'll entertain a motion to approve the agreement if there are no questions or comments.
I move approval.
Dr. Hinojosa has moved approval of the agreement that is in item C. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Bowles. Any other comments? Any other questions?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. City Manager.
yeah, I believe I'm going to abstain or recuse myself from this vote.
Whichever you say you'd like to abstain?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that'd be fine. You okay? Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. I'd like to thank all the parties involved. I thank our attorneys. Mr. City Manager, I'd like to thank you also for your assistance, your staff's assistance. Mr. King, for you and your work as well. I know this has been a very delicate issue. Certainly not anything that any of us necessarily wanted to deal with, but it fell our lot, and we appreciate everyone's cooperation and everyone's work on that. And I want to thank you again. Thank all of you again. I'll turn your attention to action item 4D. Consider cancellation of DART and Dallas ISD interlocal agreements regarding workers' compensation. Again, Mr. King.
Yes, sir, we have two more agreements that don't meet the purpose of safe and reliable transportation, so we're recommending termination of these interlocal agreements with Dallas ISD and DART to be effective March 31. We've been working with both entities, and they've got a place to go, so we're recommending terminating this agreement effective March 31.
Any comments, questions? As our new members are no doubt aware, our charge from the legislature and the authors of the legislation has been maintain transportation services for students, safe, reliable, dependable transportation. And if it falls outside that category, then we have to make some decisions, which is what this Dissolution Committee has been doing. Again, I'll give anybody a chance who wants to offer any questions. Don't hear any, so do we get a motion on that?
I'd so move, Mr. President.
Mr. Dransfield has made the motion to approve action item D. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Dr. Parra. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. We'll move on to action item 4E, consider approval and ratification of payments in excess of dollar value authorized by committee. Mr. King.
At one of your previous meetings, you authorized us to settle claims related to our fleet accident management program that were less than $50,000. We have these two claims that were actually settled prior to the Dissolution Committee's existence, but we ended up paying them, and I'll need to get your approval on that. In addition, there are two other claims that we've reported that are less than $50,000. The actual amount that we're paying during this period are less than $50,000, but when you add the amount paid prior to the committee establishment, they were exceeded $50,000. I didn't include them on this list because we're not paying more than $50,000, but in essence, those two do bump us over the limit. But at this point in time, I'm just asking for you to approve and ratify these two payments, which we made in excess of the amount authorized by the committee.
Questions about these payments or their ratification? Comments? I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Dr. Hinojosa moves approval of the ratification. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Ms. Miller. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. And finally, action item 4F, consider approval of TPA agreement. Mr. King.
Yes, sir. We're self-insured with our fleet policy, and we have a third-party administrator managing that program for us. The third-party administrator was directed at our recommendation of our attorney to not pay claims incurred by DCS. So we told our third-party administrator do not pay any claim incurred by DCS. So they gave us 24-hour notice and canceled their agreement with us. So since the last week or two, we have not had a third-party administrator managing those claims. We did go out and seek some verbal proposals. This company has agreed to be our third-party administrator between now and the end of the year. We recommend that you allow us to negotiate an acceptable contract to perform those services with this particular company, TriStar.
Any questions about the agreement of TriStar? Mr. Dransfield.
Mr. King, just could you give us an update how you contacted, how you located these guys, TriStar? I like the thought process, but how they came into our picture?
Ray, would you answer that quiz, please?
I didn't hear the question, sir.
How did we come up with TriStar as our third-party administrator? Who else did you contact? How did you know about them?
I contacted three other TPAs that I was aware of and had well-established reputations in our community. And two of the entities chose not to bid because of the scenario that we're in. TriStar was cooperative. Their quote is comparative to what we're paying today. So they're being very honorable in their quote. They're not taking advantage of the circumstances, and they're cooperating. They presently are TPA for three of the committee members for the entities represented here today, as well as, well, now the City of Dallas also utilizes them, Fort Worth ISD and the City of Irving, to name a few.
Thank you, very helpful.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Any other questions? Comments? If not, ready for a motion?
Move approval.
Dr. Hinojosa has moved approval.
Second.
Ken has got the second on that for the approval to move forward to try to get a TPA agreement. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes unanimously. Before we move on, Kay, to the discussion items, I should have noted that Dr. Hinojosa did step off the dais on items B and D. I don't know if you want to be shown as abstaining on those, but Dr. Hinojosa would like to be shown as abstaining on those votes as well. Okay, we'll move on to our discussion items. Discussion item 5A, financial information. Mr. King.
This is really not much different than what I've presented in the past, but I did want to give you an update and maybe a little bit different look at it. But if you'll turn to page 52, if you look up on the screen behind us, you'll see what our government-wide net position has done. And I took this from the audited financial statements between 2011-12 and 2015-16. Our government-wide net position has gone from $77 million to $31 million. The unaudited financial statement for 2016-17 shows us a deficit of $8 million. Now, in addition to operating at a loss, a couple of things we did to the 16-17 financial statement is we wrote off $6.7 million worth of assets value that we had on the books for the service centers that are under the lease agreement. You know, there's really no value to the district for those service centers. I don't know why, well, I know why one of the GASB pronouncements says that we could continue to keep it booked, but since there's no value, we wrote it off, so that's $6.7 million. We wrote off the intangible asset for the right to market the Stop Arm program, statewide basis of $19 million. And we also wrote off $6.8 million worth of cameras that we have invested in the Stop Arm vendor. In other words, that's the cameras that we purchased for them, so we wrote those off. And that's how we end up with an unaudited deficit of $8.2 million. And what I did on the next few slides is this probably won't mean anything to anybody but me, but I made all of our funds look like a government-wide fund instead of an enterprise fund. And when I did that, our undesignated fund balance of June 30th, 2017 was $12,199,000. Our projected operating loss during the year is $14 million. Income sources, $11 million. So funds available to pay debt at the end of the year are $8.4 million. Now, what I still don't know, some of the unknowns in that part of the calculation is I don't know what's going to happen to the settle-up that the districts are going to deal with at the end of this fiscal year. And I don't know the impact of delayed payments. You know, right now we've delayed payments because they don't relate to safe and reliable transportation. I don't know how that's going to impact our fund balance. So those are two of the issues that I'm working on. So you got $8 million to pay for $94 million worth of debt, $40 million worth of debt on the service centers. So basically you got $8 million to pay $126 million worth of debt. I still don't know how much debt the county's going to assume. We've been working on that for a while. And I don't know how much interest is going to accrue between December 31 and the end of the fiscal year. So, you know, it's still a pretty gloomy picture. The next slide shows you how I calculated the fund balance. I took the $14.7 million worth of fund balance on the financial statement. We still have a couple $1 million worth of accounts payable. We're debating with vendors, and I think our allowance for uncollectible receivables may be understated. So that's how I came up with the $12 million. And then if you come to the next page, page 56, you'll see the operating losses, and we've kind of already talked about that. The previous board adopted a deficit budget of $7.9 million. They then increased the deficit by a budget limit of $800,000, and then they missed the revenue and the accounts that we previously talked about. So that's how we came up with the operating loss of $15 million. The other income sources, if we sell the building we're in now, $6.1 million. We got the Beckley property, which we think we can sell for $3 million. And if I could sell other property other than buses for $2 million, then we end up with $11.1 million. One of the big issues we're dealing with right now is receivables. So last Saturday, I sent a listing of all the receivables to each of your CFOs, requesting them to look at it. So if you can see, prior to July 1, we had $500,000 worth of invoices. Prior to 16, another $500,000. So we have a lot of really old receivables out there. So I sent those to all your CFOs, and you know, working with them to see when I'm going to get paid. I'm not going to write anything off. We don't have authority to do that. If I write anything off, I'll bring it to this committee. So I'm not expecting at the year end, I'm not going to have any bad debts or any receivables. I'll bring anything that I have to write off to you. Like right now, I know I have some receivables that the Stop Arm vendor owes me about $100,000 in the receivable. Prime Prep owes me a little bit of money. They're going out of business, so there may be a few that are write-offs. So, you know, we need to get a receivables current, and that'll be another issue we talk about later. But that's a real quick update of where we're at. If there are any questions, we'll be try to address them.
I think you used the words gloomy. I think that's probably still accurate. Any questions about the financial information, the report? Dr. Hinojosa.
No questions, just a couple of comments. My staff did brief me on some of the receivables that we are going through, making sure that we'll make you whole on that. We have to do some internal reconciliations from departments to make sure, but we're in the process of doing that. So that's the first comment. The second comment I would like to make is that, and my wife accuses me of this when we're playing golf. When she's about to beat me, I start complimenting her on how well she's doing, because she can't, the pressure gets to her, then I might finally win. So I hate to do this, famous last words, Mr. King, but despite these gloomy financial numbers, it's really a credit to all the bus drivers and the mechanics and the dispatchers and yourself that today we're close to the end of January. Despite the election in November, we're getting our kids to school. You guys are doing a great job, and I know that under some very tough circumstances, and I don't think that word gets out there, but every week that I look up and we make it through another week, I'm very proud of all the people who have put all the extra effort in making this happen under the very public microscope. But I really want to thank you, your team that you have, and the people that have put this together and helping us get our kids to school. So I just wanted to publicly thank you for all that hard work.
Thank you. We really do have a dedicated staff, and the transportation team and the whole staff that's with us, they're really doing a great job. And I would like you to worry about every week, because it's hard to keep people here to finish the year. So it's a challenge for our whole team. But thank you.
And I would say thank you too also, Michael. Appreciate you sharing that. I think the entire board, we're here just looking at the difficulties that Mr. King is facing and trying to take action. But yet we know that, as you said, the bus drivers and all the support staff and the people who are moving the students are key to this organization. We appreciate all of them. Thanks for your observations, and likewise, Mr. King, thanks for your work. I had one question. Did I hear you say that we are talking to the county? That there are conversations between this entity and the
No,
county?
we have not started talking.
Okay.
We don't know how much debt the county is going to assume.
Okay.
We're working on that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, we'll move on to item 5B, the stop arm report. Mr. King.
Yes, sir. And there's a separate handout that I've prepared, and will also be a PowerPoint. But basically, we have interlocal agreements to operate the stop arm program in cities and ISDs, and we think we've got about 45 agreements out there. We think we've purchased 5,800 camera kits, and there's 12 cameras per kit. We don't know where they're all at. We sent a team to El Paso and San Antonio this last weekend to try to verify locations, and they weren't very successful. I think we found anywhere from about 75% was what we're looking at. One district is supposed to have cameras, and we couldn't find any cameras there. So we've purchased 5,800 cameras. Kits, we don't know where they're at. We issue citations from those cameras, about $300 a citation, and we split that with the various entities. Prior to January 1, 2017, Dallas County Schools was managing the stop arm program, the issuance of tickets and the collection of tickets. On January 1, 2017, they entered into a new agreement with the FMS to provide the service. DCS was to receive $400,000, and we were to pay FMS $190,000. If you flip over to the next slide, these are the in-county districts that have cameras. And then on the next slide, you'll see out-of-county districts that have cameras. And at the bottom, you can't read it, but below his letter, you'll see FMS. FMS was assigned a number of our cameras, and we really don't know exactly where those are. You'll flip over one more slide, you'll see the participating cities. And then the next slide, we'll start talking about the problems. FMS has breached the 2017 agreement with us to go out and manage the program on a statewide basis and locally, and they haven't sent us any money, so we haven't sent them any money. There's citations being issued out of county on committee equipment, but no funds have been forwarded to the committee. The vendor has been marketing the FMS product which appears to violate the franchise agreement we have in place. You know, the $20 million we put out there, somebody is marketing that without our permission. In-county citations have been issued by a vendor who doesn't have a valid contract with the district. This vendor now has billed us for the services, and he's removed all of our record-keeping access to the system. Stop arm camera purchases are not supported by receiving reports. We've talked about it before. All this stuff was received and paid for based on somebody's determination other than DCS personnel. When we went to the locations last week, we found out that an unauthorized vendor was moving cameras off our buses and putting them somewhere else. Camera life appears to be shorter than the length of the loans associated with the purchase. So if you were going to sustain this program, you should be buying cameras every year for the existing locations. We haven't been doing that. For the 5 years ending June 30, 2017, DCS, this is just cash. We spent $46 million more than we received for the stop arm program. We got $29 million still booked as an asset of stop arm cameras. Doesn't appear to be any market for these assets. DCS borrowed money from a creditor and then entered into agreement with FMS for the repayment of the loan. FMS has breached this agreement. DCS is part of marketing this program. They agreed to pay a portion of the proceeds received from citations participating districts and cities, and they have not made that payment. Nor do we know what the liability is for the out-of-county program since January 1. Our future recommendation, we're going to recommend not at this meeting, but just give you time to think about it. We're going to recommend terminating operation of the program in full by notifying all the entities that have agreements with us. Terminate the agreement between DCS and FMS formally. Issue cease and desist letters to known parties. And then we got to figure out the best way to liquidate the assets. And staff is here to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? From any member committee? We do not know who is issuing citations now and who is not. Is that correct?
We do not know. We got an idea, but we don't know for certain. We do not have an agreement for that to be done.
But we think that's happening.
We know it's happening in Dallas because I've been getting some of the money.
Yes?
Yes, I
Celine?
have one question, Mr. King. On the 2012A through 2014, on the debt that was used to acquire school buses and camera equipment, is that camera equipment part of the stop arm program as well when we acquired those buses? The
You're
camera
not speaking
equipment
to the microphones.
Oh, okay. So you have, or we have, 4 contractual obligations listed here, and the description is acquisition of school buses and camera equipment. Is the camera equipment part of the stop arm program as well?
Yes, ma'am. And so, and that's, you know, that $46 million only included that we've spent more than we received, only includes stuff that went through those particular funds. The general fund is paying a lot of debt for stop arms that were issued that not particularly tied there. And in that particular case, we didn't, you know, since it was lumped together, the stop arm camera and the bus, we just have it in that one place.
Okay,
But it is on those buses.
okay,
There's 231 buses in that particular
okay.
point.
Other questions? Comments? I think, as Mr. King said, we can look forward to this as a future agenda item, and just an editorial comment, it probably can't come soon enough. But any event, if there's no other questions, we'll move to discussion item 5C, the bus inventory report.
So we did a physical count of all the buses at each lot. We've reconciled it to our perpetual accounting system, and we've reconciled it to titles. And you know, there's about 300 or 400 buses that we have where we don't have copies of the titles, so we're going to have to go out and get those titles. And I sent that list out to your staffs on Friday. I'm going to ask them to verify the list, that this is basically on their lot. But if you'll look, you'll notice that the fair market value of the buses, the number of vehicles assigned on the buses, and the percent of billing of the buses is relatively the same. So if we distribute buses, if the districts verify this is the number of buses that are out there, and if we distribute buses in this fashion described here, will probably be a method of distributing the buses. Now, when we finally do distribute the buses, I'm going to recommend that we don't distribute any bus to any component district who has not fully paid up on their account. We need to do that. We need to make sure that, as a committee, we need to make sure the committee gets all their resources before we start giving them away. So at some point in the future, hopefully at the next meeting, we'll have that worked out. If we can't come up with an agreement where everybody pays, then I'll just take those buses and redistribute it back to the districts that have paid before I get a final approval of the list. So, your staffs will be working through that at the next week or two, and the sooner we can get that information back to you, then the sooner we'll have a recommendation on what to do.
Dr. Hinojosa, questions?
Yeah, Mr. King also noticed that on the last item on the spreadsheet, DCS, there's 32 buses associated with DCS. Are those just used by whom or for what?
Some of them are charter buses,
Okay.
and some of them are yellow buses that were planted blue, and some of them I'm going to use probably to try to even out these percentages. And the charter buses some of them are tied up in the lease purchase. Matter of fact, I had to ship 3 of them to another district the other day because we had 13 buses down at one district. So we're working through those issues. But that's those buses that can be used as a part of your normal day-to-day transportation. We're going to try to supplement it to equal out these percentages somehow.
Other questions? Yes.
Mr. King, the way it looks like is on the far right-hand side of that spreadsheet, that it says district billing.
Yes.
I'm assuming by reading it that the district have to purchase those buses for that amount? Or is the committee going to be able to give those buses to each district at no cost?
The district billing is the total amount you were billed for services last year.
Okay.
And that just shows that your portion of that billing. Like, for example, at Lancaster, the fair market bus value of the buses that you have is $2 million. So if you're paid in full with this, if you pay your 1.8 million, then I would recommend that you get your $2 million worth of assets.
Okay.
But everybody needs to be current on that billing. If not, then that's when we'll go back in and redistribute some of those. And that's something we'll be working toward over the next hopefully 2 weeks. I'd like to have a recommendation to you at the next meeting.
Obviously, you all represent districts that want to work toward getting this cleaned up as much as possible, and then the idea is to be able to move those buses to the districts lien-free.
That's correct. And in this number, there are 231 buses that are under lease that we're working out to. Hopefully, we'll get all that resolved.
Any other questions? Comments? If not, then the final discussion item is the claims settlement report.
These are the claims that we paid less than the $50,000 for the period beginning 12/7 and ending 1/3. Just for your information. If there's any questions, staff's here to answer them.
Questions, comments on the claims settlement report? Okay, I don't hear any. That being the case, the committee will move into executive session. It is 10:34. We move into executive session for purposes permitted by the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551.001, including but not limited to Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, 551.072, real property, 551.074, personnel matters, and matters that relate to the following, including an attorney update and Rick Sarles grievance and settlement offer. We'll go to closed session. It's 11:30, and the committee is back in open session. Members, I don't believe we have any action to take today, but I do have a couple of quick things. We have meetings scheduled in February for February the 12th and 26th, I believe. I believe also we had agreed to cancel the first meeting in March, which fell, I believe, on March 12th, because many of you are in your spring break. It's been brought to my attention that TASBO conference, Texas Association of School Business Officials Conference, is February 26th, or falls during that time period. I don't know how many of you, I suspect, I know 2 or 3 of you can be affected. I don't know whether you think that necessitates making any change or not in our meetings. Would anyone like to speak to that?
I do know that February 26th is a day to take courses. It's not part of the actual broad conference, so it would be specific to anyone who is choosing to take a course that day.
I think we may have some people on the committee that may be teaching, but, yes, sir?
I think we got a lot of important issues coming down, and the attendance has been phenomenal.
Okay.
So I imagine we'll have a quorum if we keep the date, and I would recommend that we just stick with it, and if we don't, we should be able to have a quorum.
I concur. I know some of you have important work to do there, but I think we've got some pretty important things to do in February, so we better stay with our schedule on February the 12th and 26th. We don't have a meeting scheduled March 12th. We do have a meeting scheduled March 26th, and I don't have the remainder of the schedule, but we'll put, yes.
Dr. Moses, just so it'll help with determining a quorum on that date, the
Yeah.
26th, I'm going to be unavailable to be here.